You're listening to PatchBay on tymkrs.
Welcome to PatchBay, a conversational podcast all about audio equipment, music, audio engineering, recording, live sound, and all of the crap that I'm having to order on eBay today.
Awesome. Ordering crap on eBay is always fun.
Yeah.
Are you buying it now then, I guess?
Yeah.
That's never fun. I never enjoy buying it now.
Auctions are tricky.
They are,
You gotta learn the ropes on how to play the auctions right. Never bid until it's got about 30 seconds left, and only bid once and put the absolute max that you're willing to pay. Don't play the game, people.
Yeah, it's too much like work. So what were you buying?
Oh, let's see. Today, last couple of days, I've been busy getting all the little bits and pieces together for the big studio rewire.
Cool.
So it's today I was doing audio isolation transformers to go between the PCs and the matrix router, and all the cables to get back and forth between those things. Also the 4-channel limiter expander gate compressor thing.
Which what kind was it that you bought?
I'm not gonna say that brand name.
Okay, cool beans. That's all right.
Yeah.
And does it?
The one that I can afford, Shane. The one that I can afford.
Fair enough, as long as it does the job, right?
Hopefully it does the job. If the pots are as bad on that thing as the headphone distribution amplifier that I got from then it's gonna be junk in a year.
Yeah, you'll be DIYing the fix-it version.
Yeah, I'll have to take the jacks out, measure the pots rather, take the pots out, measure the resistance I had them set to, and then solder a resistor in place.
Right.
Now that's set it and forget it, man.
Yeah, no, let's totally set it and forget it. Although it's nice to be able to have the ability to fix something like that if it is kind of wonky, that's actually a very handy thing. It's a 4-channel one?
Yeah, 4 channels. We need one for each of the Skype callers because we're doing dual Skype ins. One for co-host or guest, and the other one for co-host or guest. Depending on which show we're talking about. For this one, we're talking about me, Shane, and whoever is helping us out.
Right.
We got an email from one of those people today, actually.
Oh, okay.
Who was that? Colin?
Oh, yeah. Colin was suggesting that we continue to keep talking about him, so we just have to officially get him on at this point. So
I
guess we'll
Colin
use
is
him
an
as
imaginary character on PatchBay that we like to talk about occasionally. For those of you who think that Colin is real, you're deluding yourself.
Yep. Anyway, so we'll use him as a guinea pig to get everything going.
Yeah, and that's all that drummers are really good for, anyway.
Exactly, them's fighting words. That'll at least start the conversation.
Awesome. So, yeah, 2 channels for the Skype callers, and then 2 channels for the mics here in the studio. So we'll be doing the 4-track thing for now.
That'll be all right. That's enough. That's what you need anyway. So.
The main thing is the ATEM that allows us to switch this all over to video and live encoding is really, really expensive, like almost $1,000 expensive. But I can get everything else in place while we're getting that together. So getting all of the audio side of things taken care of first, and then just using multi-track GarageBand to do the recording for us until the ATEM is here allows us to start getting the co-hosts and secondary guest sort of things taken care of here in the studio without having to wait forever for the big pile of money to build up.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, it's going to be nice. Obviously it's nice to have the video, but it'd be nice just to be able to have the extra co-hosts and things like that on, just as far as just doing audio anyway, right?
Yeah, well, the ATEM will enable us to do video, but the primary thing that I'm interested in that it can do is it can automatically render it out to H.264. So, instead of having to take time to edit these and master them and all that, The Dynamics box that I just ordered, that we've been talking about here, takes
Mhm.
care of all of the levels for me going in.
Right.
And then the ATEM will automatically convert it right in line directly to a file on hard drive that's already ready to upload.
Oh, that's gonna make everything ridiculously easy.
Right, so I can go from doing 6 shows a week to doing 12 shows a week and not hurt, right? I'll be...
Yeah.
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 And I don't know if we'll do 12 shows a week. We may still do just the 6 shows a week, but I'll have a lot more time to do awesome projects and DIY
you'll
stuff.
actually have time to do like create some extraneous content, right?
Yeah, and one of our shows is all about, the DIY projects we do around here, Timemaker Television.
Yeah,
And
exactly.
lately I have not had time to do any DIY projects.
And that was sort of the original podcaster.
Yeah, that's the
audio thing, right?
original show. Yeah, that's what we started with. And
Cool.
that's been going for almost 3 years now, I guess.
Wow.
I've got some really cool projects coming in the pipe on that show, by the way, that you guys out there, PatchBay listeners, will probably get a kick out of.
Is that one of them the synthesizer box thing?
That one is in progress. We've already talked about that one here on the show. I got some more parts in the mail for today, actually. The MIDI jacks came today. Some of the circuitry parts that are involved with interfacing with MIDI also came today. MIDI is optically isolated from whatever it's connecting to.
Okay.
So a MIDI keyboard, for example, is sending out a voltage, turning on and off, to send what it means.
Right. Yeah.
But the receiver on the other side of it, whatever you're plugging it into, isn't electrically connected to that. It's taking that power and hooking it up essentially to a little light. And then it's got a sensor sitting next to the light. And what it's watching is the sensor. So as the light blinks on and off,
right?
Yeah, it can see those little pulses as they come in without being electrically connected to the other piece of equipment. And it's obviously a two-way signal, but we don't need to go into details on that. It's the same thing in the opposite direction. So that's really easy. So I have to build this, isolation into my circuit so that I'm not hooking my synthesizer directly up to the electrical, circuit in the source MIDI device, the keyboard or sequencer or what have you. It needs to be isolated, and it's actually a really expensive little chip. It's like $2.
Yeah, no kidding. $2 for the chip.
For just a little tiny little integrated circuit, yeah.
I was going to mention, if I know how we ask if people have, things around the house that they don't need anymore. It would be good if somebody had an old piece of crap Casio keyboard of sorts that you could bastardize for parts like MIDI jacks and things, right?
If it's a functioning keyboard, I wouldn't take anything out of it. A lot of the Casio keyboards can be modified with a few more modern little bits and pieces to have much cleaner outputs and be very, very useful in a modern producer role.
Just completely off topic, but I just got an advertisement for a Nissan on my Skype. So I guess that's how Skype makes money, eh?
Yay, Microsoft. Woo.
Ooh. Okay, anyway, back to... Okay, well, sorry. Well, what... Okay, so clearly if one was not working and somebody had it sitting in their basement, that might be a fun little project. Not that you don't have enough projects
well,
already.
You can get a MIDI jack for like 20 cents, right?
Yeah, this is true.
Digikey.com, Mouser.com, Jameco.com, any of these places will sell you the jacks for really, really cheap. And all the other little parts that you need to. So, I don't know, gutting things that are potentially historical in value, right?
Probably not
the Casio keyboard, when there was a million of them around in 1986 or whatever, it was a piece of crap, right? But most of those have been junked, thrown away. They've had batteries blow up in them. They're all no good. So the number of them that are out there is getting smaller and smaller and smaller every day. It's not nearly as small of a pool as, say, good Hammond organs or something like that, but still, it's good to keep those kinds of things around for the future.
Yeah, exactly. I was going to mention, actually, That's what I use in the studio actually. Is a Casio keyboard. I can't remember what model it is, but um, that's my controller for anything in Pro Tools, which is kind of handy.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's what I tend to use actually, which is kind of fun. But yeah, and it still functions pretty well, other than the fact that it's not obviously not weighted keys in any way,
Yeah.
shape, or form.
I was just gonna say one of my favorite MIDI controllers I've ever used was my dad's early '80s Roland weighted piano. Yeah, that thing is a beast, and it plays just like a full-blown grand.
No
Feels
kidding.
just like it. Yeah, it's nice to play on, and just use that old school MIDI output and use it to control your synthesizers. It's fun.
Well, I was gonna say I can see why weighted keys make sense for people who actually learned on real pianos. For a guy like me who really has no clue whatsoever, it doesn't really matter that much to me. Although I have played weighted keys ones before, and there's definitely a better feel there. You
Yeah.
feel like you're actually smashing on actual keys rather than smashing on plastic that doesn't give or move. You know.
Um, I own a
But
lot
anyway,
of
yeah.
keys, and the favorite things that I've played on are like real old school pianos. They have such a nice feel to them. And also, Hammond organs have those really nice, what they call waterfall keys. They don't have the lip coming out the front, so you can do those
Right.
gliss slides
Mm,
across it without cutting yourself or getting hung up or anything like that. Those
right. Right.
are by far the two most uh, playable things that I think I can have said that I've ever experienced. The waterfall keys on the Hammonds are definitely not weighted in any way, shape, or form. They're just spring, they're
Yeah.
closing a copper spring, but they play really, really well. So it's not all just about the weight. It's also about how nicely it works with your hands doing the job that they're trying to do.
I was gonna say, so what did you call those keys on the Hammond?
Waterfall keys. They've
Waterfall keys.
got waterfall keys and they've got diving board keys, depending on which model of Hammond and what year. So the waterfall keys are the ones that just roll right over and go straight down.
Right.
The diving board ones are the ones that stick out, like you see on almost every modern MIDI controller or keyboard. They got the
Right.
plastic diving board thing going, and I can't stand those.
I was gonna ask, so have they ever released a regular old synthesizer controller with the Hammond kind of keys?
Not that I've ever been able to find.
Yeah.
Um,
'Cause that
you get
seems to me like a good marketing plan, you
they've
know.
got some like Hammond player centric synthesizers out there, Nord and
Mhm.
whatnot, but they charge so much money for them that I've never bothered
Well,
looking
yeah,
into
and
them
it's
too much.
from what I gather, I mean the Nords they're really good synths, but I don't know if they're a one trick pony per se, but I mean if you already have an actual Hammond, then I don't know how I'm not a keyboard player obviously, but I don't know the price that they're paying for those things. It seems like it's a very specific instrument, right?
Yeah, what you're paying for with the Nord is portability
Yeah.
and
Which
lack of maintenance. That's the big thing because a
yeah.
Hammond organ is an electromechanical device. It's like a car. There's
Yeah.
so many moving parts and crazy old electronical bits and pieces and capacitors that are drying out, and just keeping one of those things running is an
Mhm.
expensive proposition. I've got
Yeah, and
two of
all
them
the
sitting
cool
down
kind of
there,
stuff.
and both of them have issues, and they're just going to have to wait until I've got some extra cash laying around to do the big work on them that needs doing, because there's no way to get that done anymore. All the guys that used to do it for a living have retired or passed away.
There are books though, right? I mean, you were discussing before about the piano fixing book, but there are obviously books out there for Hammonds and stuff,
For
right?
the Hammond era, it's more like there was technicians' manuals for them,
Right.
and that documents a lot of the problems that they expected to happen, a lot of the wear parts and stuff like that. But those things weren't written with a 50, 60-year time span in mind,
Right.
right?
Right.
They're
Right.
like
Right.
they're kind of the equivalent now to what you expect a guy who fixes plasma TVs or something, right?
Right.
They're written for that dude, but the dude who's fixing a plasma TV 60 years from now is going to have very different problems with that piece of equipment than
Well,
somebody
yeah.
who's fixing it now, because time ages things.
Well, yeah.
In addition to the service manuals and schematics and things that you can get for Hammonds, the best resource out there is something called Organ Forum. And you guys can find this with a Google search. I'm sure Shane will put it in the show notes too. So it's a forum of guys who, it's broken down into different types of organs. If you play a Wurlitzer theater organ or a Hammond B3 or an M3, or you work on pipe organs, whatever you happen to do, there's sub-forums there with basically everybody who still works on them today hangs out in those forums, and you ask questions and they happily answer any and anything, down to the smallest minute detail. I had a problem once, and a guy on there named Toaster Dude, I took pictures of the tone generator in one of my organs, put them on there, and he analyzed it, compared it to his, and figured out that somebody had soldered a wire to the wrong spot when they'd done a repair at some previous point.
Oh,
so
man.
that is the kind of detail of help that you can get there. So that's the place.
No kidding. Okay, yeah, no kidding. There's a few of those types of there's a Telecaster players forum that I go to once in a while, and it's got a lot of interesting little hacks and guys who because Telecasters were like really such a basic guitar when they came out, that they're fairly easy to sort of hack and create your own. Like if you're talking like the original sort of broadcaster or Esquire or Tele that only had the one pickup, there was like no body molding on them or anything like that. So like to sort of create what Leo did in the first place, there's a lot of guys who are on there building, like going out and buying some kind of sexy expensive wood, not alder, but you know what I mean, and building. It's sort of the same kind of idea, although probably far less technical. But it's also, yeah, it's nice that there's those forums out there where, birds of a feather can flock together, as it were, right?
Yeah, and if it's the right kind of people, it can be such a positive environment too, and that's definitely the case on the Organ Forum. Everyone there is very pleasant, very helpful.
When I was doing some research on my old Garnet amplifier, which is eventually going to get worked on, I found a few forums of guys who actually build guitar amps. And it kind of reminds me of you, sort of, to a degree. Like, I was sort of reading through some of these guys, and the guy's got like, post a picture of an amp. He's like, just wired this thing up, just before breakfast. Kind of went like, I don't know if he had all the parts at home or whatever, but he basically wired an amp, in 3 hours, and kind of went off of a schematic of another amp he'd built plus some additions from a JCM or whatever. I'm like, really? In 3 hours you pull this off? So anyway, there's good forums for obviously anything that you want to find. The trick is sorting out sort of the it's nice when you find forums like the Womb, where everybody there is happy to have a conversation with you at least, and normally point out when you're wrong, but not in a GS kind of way. And most of the time, well, we've talked about this before, but most of the time they're not the stupid conversations like, I have this much money to spend and I want it to sound miraculous type conversation.
Yeah, those are kind of they've been done.
Yeah.
So
Those ones, I think they just delete them actually nowadays, like the moderators on.
Yeah.
They just delete it,
People can find the original one that they keep. Because that topic has happened every week for years and years. So this is like the longest roundabout way to answer your question ever. It's like 15 minutes of tangents, but you were asking which projects I was alluding to coming up on Toymaker Television.
Right. Yeah.
You get a kick out of this one. So I've been watching for years and years and years for the right cabinet to come up because I've got an idea of exactly what I want to do for my guitar amp for my cigar box guitars.
Mhm.
And I finally saw a deal that I couldn't pass up. It's a 1936 Philco Tombstone radio that has none of the guts in it. It's empty.
Awesome. Oh, that I already see the coolness that's going to happen.
It
So it's
just
completely
emanates
empty.
awesome, doesn't it? Just
Yeah,
the
yeah,
idea.
totally. And how much was it? And how big is the speaker that's going into it?
It was let's see. They cost a little bit to ship them, but I think it was like between 50 and $60 for the case.
Yeah,
So yeah, it was
bad.
it was a acceptable deal for that, considering the condition that it was in. And I've always been watching for one without the electronics because I don't want to rip one apart
Right.
because
Yeah.
there's
Yeah.
guys out there that restore them, and I want those guys to be able to, do what they do because they do a really good job. I've actually seen a restored 1936 555B or 556B, I think is the one that I've got. Another guy restored one, like you said, on a forum. He posted pictures and all that. Absolutely beautiful radio. The case that I got doesn't have very many scratches on it, but yeah, the glass is intact on little dial and all that. The grill cloth is still original and still whole.
Slick.
So, I don't have to do any of that kind of work to it. I can slap some Restore finish on there and it'll be absolutely beautiful. Now, here's the fun bit. If on the inside of it, it's got enough room, can you guess which speaker that I have here I want to use?
I can guess, and I would put the drum roll into a rotating speaker.
No,
of
no,
sorts.
no.
No?
That would be
What?
cool. That would be cool,
Okay.
but no.
Then a Weber speaker.
So I've got something here that I've been wanting to do something with for years. I got a Hammond S model from the late 30s. That's a chord organ. So those didn't have the tone wheels or anything. They're just all tube based, and it was completely unsalvageable other than the case and the speaker. So I kept the speaker out of it, but it happens to be a field coil speaker, which we've talked about before. They don't have a permanent magnet on the back of them. They have a giant electromagnet.
Right. And they don't make them anymore. So that's
No,
cool.
no, they don't make those anymore. So
Okay, well that'd be cool.
now guitarists who are in the know absolutely love field coil speakers because there's two different things about them that make them really good for guitars. One is the attack response on them is much better because a giant electromagnet has a hell of a lot more flux than a permanent magnet does. So that's good. And two, most of the field coil speakers, the field coil was used as the choke in the amplifier itself. So as you play louder, the current draw changes and the field gets weaker. So they are automatically compressing.
Oh, that's handy.
Yeah, neat, right?
That's totally cool.
Now I don't know if I'm badass enough to be able to design an amplifier like that dude you were talking about a minute ago that uses the field coil as a choke and automatically compresses. But I have been doing some forum research and figuring out how I can create the 300 volt DC power supply required to power that field coil. But it won't be reactive to the playing if I do it that way. It'll just be a bah, I'm a magnetic field.
Yeah, exactly. Just but that makes sense though. You need that much. So you'll need okay, it needs 300 volts to power the speaker.
Yeah, basically what I'm doing is rectifying the 115 coming out the wall.
Right.
And when you do a full wave rectification, it doubles it. There's some other math involved. I'm not going to get into the details, but it lands around 300 volts. And you need a really big capacitor in there to smooth out all the crap that comes through the rectifier as it's, trying to change a sine wave into a DC signal.
Dumb question. Is there nothing in the organ that the speaker came out of that you can use?
maybe, but it's the organ, the transformer, and all the. I could potentially use the transformer out of it if it were a 1-to-1, because I really do need to do the around 300 volts. I can't use a transformer that's got any sort of ratio to it, and I've found some sources for little transformers that'll do that job, so I'm not too worried about it. But the main thing is the big capacitor, and those capacitors from back then are dried out.
Yes, you wouldn't be able to use it anyway. I was going to ask you about this
because it's
cabinet.
oil and paper, right? So I mean, they don't function correctly after 10 years or whatever. They're done, and these are, gosh, from the late 30s.
Yeah, they're 60 or 90 years old almost. So the cabinet that you bought, is this one of the the old ass big radios that are 5 feet by 3 feet wide?
It's not a floor standing one, but it's got some size to it. We'll see if it'll fit. Hopefully it'll fit. If it won't fit exactly where the original speaker was, I'm assuming it won't fit there because they were smaller. I may put a baffle inside of it and mount my 12-inch driver to the baffle, and then just leave some funky space between the speaker and the front.
Which isn't a bad idea anyway.
It's going to sound a little bit weird with that empty space in there, so I may have to create some sort of a filler to make sure that speaker can only propagate out through the original. Yeah,
you don't want it going down. In layman's terms, if that speaker is, any further away than where the grill cloth sits other than wood, you're going to have bass transference through the floor, and you won't have as clean of a signal coming out the front of the speaker, obviously.
Yeah.
Right?
So, and I've also got
that makes sense.
two different tube amps that I'm considering for using as the amplification in this guy. I've got my Epiphone Valve Jr., which is a very simple 12AX7 6V6 tube amp, just a very, very simple head. And I also have the amplifier out of my my Leslie cabinet. I'm not using its onboard amplifier, so there's a very, very nice tube amp sitting in the bottom of that cabinet that's not being used, and I'm considering using that one because that one will definitely have some balls.
Oh, I like that idea. I was actually watching on Pawn Stars, that TV show on History Channel. This guy bought an old Leslie cabinet, and he got it for really cheap, and then just did mods on it. So he took it to some guitar guy, and he modded it was basically the speaker, the rotating speaker plus the tube amp that was built into it, and he converted it all so that not only you could use it for an organ, but you could use it for guitar, and it's just so ridiculously tube ampy sounding.
Yeah,
awesome. Yeah, I would almost say if you could pull that off, that would be super nifty, And
what'll make the decision at the end of the day is, one, if it'll all fit in the case.
Yeah.
The Epiphone Valve Jr. is a very small circuit board inside of it that houses the tubes and all that, so I can squeeze that down to a very small size.
Well, it's a very small amp to begin with, too, right?
Yeah. It's like a 5-watt amp, so it's perfect for that little thing. So there's some plus sides to that one. The Leslie one is bigger, and it may be too loud. We'll have to see how they sound with that field coil speaker if it fits. If it doesn't fit, then we need to have an episode all about what speaker should Whisker use in a 1936 Philco to use as a cigar box guitar amplifier. Next week, we should talk about some of the ideas I have for my next guitar build.
Oh, okay, cool. Yeah, I'm excited about that.
All right, was there anything else you needed to cover this week? Because we're about out of time.
Yeah, I was just going to mention that my grandmother has that speaker, or the radio that I thought this was. She's got one of those that are the living room kind of 5 foot by 3 foot radio.
Man.
Still works, actually.
Of course.
So, yeah, so
probably needs new capacitors, though.
Yeah, eventually that one will be coming home with me. And actually, a friend of mine too posted on Twitter that they had bought an old one like that too, and was listening to obviously hockey games on it. But
Of course. Yeah.
yeah. But anyway, no, that's
Hockey
all.
games are better with nice tube saturation and compression.
Exactly. Anyway, cool. Let's wrap this one up.
All right, that's it for us. You guys can find this show every Friday at PatchBay.tv. There's also an RSS feed there. If you don't want to have to check it, you can have it automatically download with your phone, iTunes, whatever. That's it for us. We'll see you guys next week.